As you're recording?
Yes. So I have a few very short general questions to start with that I would like you to answer in 1 or maximum 5 words. Can you describe your current job?
I am a postdoctoral fellow at the University of Calgary.
Your current location?
Calgary, Alberta in Canada.
Your current mobile device?
Oh, I am currently on a laptop. Is that what you wanted to know?
Well, that would be the second, or the fourth question, which is current computer.
Oh, okay. My current mobile device, I have a Pixel 2.
And current computer?
It's a laptop. Not very exciting one.
So now I'll go into a list of how I work questions. And The first one is, can you briefly explain your current situation and research to us?
Yeah, so like I said, I'm a postdoc at the University of Calgary, and I am transitioning between labs from my first to second postdoc. My previous work, I was looking at a aerobic exercise intervention for brain health in older adults, specifically focusing on neuroendocrinology markers and cognition. And my new position, I am going to be working on a protocol looking at syncope or fainting for benign reasons and ways of getting patients with those conditions from frequenting the ER and starting to use more community-based health intervention. So going to their primary care physician or a urgent care clinic instead of using the emergency room.
Thank you. Then we go to more technical questions. Which tools, application, and software are essential to your workflow?
All right. Since I'm in a psychology department and work mainly with cognitive neuroscience, I actually wear a bunch of different hats, and the tools vary very much by what project I'm working on. So a lot of my research can just be paper and pencil kind of cognitive tests. Sometimes I'll use computerized tests. That would just be sort of a laptop or a desktop computer, oftentimes with touchscreen capability, sometimes a tablet. But then there's some days where I am in wet lab, and then the requirements for my job change quite dramatically. So there it's more of a bench situation where I need pipettes, I need gloves, I need very technical equipment of either a plate reader or a mass spectrometer, and so I'll occasionally use liquid chromatography coupled to mass spec to quantify hormones in saliva or blood. So my days can vary quite dramatically.
Well, that's a lot of different things indeed.
Yes. And that's not even getting to the big magnets.
Ooh.
MRI.
Mm-hmm. So my third question is usually, what does your workspace setup look like? But that's already partially answered by our previous question, which is going from testing in really the laboratory setting or the other testing. I do wanted to ask if you sometimes work from a home office as well.
So at the moment, no. So I just returned from mat leave in October, and in the transition of mat leave and having twins, we also moved to a new house. So my previous desk situation has sort of been consumed by baby stuff, and also just hasn't really gotten situated after the move. So right now, I work on campus primarily, just because I don't have the home office space yet. But I hope to someday when I have time again.
Mm-hmm. Then my next question is, what is your best advice for productive academic work?
So my advice is to schedule yourself as much as you can and to stick to that schedule. Um, so, and with that being said, also to schedule in breaks for yourself, because if you have meeting after meeting after meeting, or writing segment and then a meeting and no space in between, you're going to burn yourself out very quickly during the day. So make sure that you give yourself 15-minute breaks to just get up from your desk, to walk around, to go grab a coffee, to pop your head into a friend's office and go say hello. Because usually after those breaks are kind of when you're most productive. But also with the scheduling yourself, also making sure that you write down or schedule time for the non-glamorous tasks of writing abstracts, writing manuscripts, doing data analysis, and being realistic on the amount of time that you actually need to complete those tasks. So I know some people who are really great at sitting down and cranking out a paragraph in a half an hour. If you're not one of those people, be more honest with yourself that you might need a couple of hours of time to really get into your writing and actually get something useful out of it. Because nobody wants to get through their half an hour and feel lousy that they got nothing done.
That's excellent advice. In the same line, what is your best advice for academic parents?
So I have only been doing the academic parenting thing for a short while. So I was on mat leave and now just back into it. But I think for myself, having really clear times when I am mom and really clear times when I am Dr. Drogos. So keeping those from creeping into each other has been very helpful for me. So in the morning, getting the girls off to daycare, I'm mom. And the second I pull onto campus, as long as something doesn't go sideways, I get to wear my professional hat until I have to go get the girls again. And then from the time that we get home until they're down to bed, I'm mom again. And then sometimes I go back to doing some work. So for me, that's been working well.
My next question is a little more technical again. How do you keep an overview of projects and tasks?
I'm a list maker. I'm very
There's
guilty.
Nothing wrong with that.
Very guilty of having many lists on the go. So I will often have sort of a daily list of things I need to get done that day, and I try and keep that short, partially because it feels good to be able to check stuff off. And also, I don't want to overwhelm myself with just having a running list of everything I need to do. That is an actual second list that I have of the running list of everything I need to do. And then sort of on top of that is having a very, very thorough calendar. So anytime I have a meeting, or even if it's something that I just need to remind myself to send somebody an email, it goes into my calendar. That way I'll get notifications, I'll get pop-ups. At this point, I've learned that trying to outsource my memory to my electronic devices is very, very useful, because I've got too much going on at this point for me to keep in track of in my own head.
That's something I can totally relate to.
Yes, it only seems to grow by the year.
Mm-hmm. Now, besides a phone and computer, do you use other technological tools in work and daily life?
In daily life, I have a tablet, but not really. And as far as work goes, it really depends on what I'm doing that day. So sometimes I will need sort of technical equipment in my ability to record things like heart rate, or if I'm looking at other physiological outcomes. So blood pressure, heart rate, those are kind of the basic ones. But I have also been involved in MRI research or functional imaging, and that the equipment rises dramatically on that day because I need an MRI scanner. So yeah, I interact with a lot of equipment, a lot of different equipment based on the day. Occasionally I'll use watches or what looks like little wristband-based monitors that will measure activity levels and sleep levels throughout the day. So stuff like that. I use a lot of wearable technology for my participants.
Then the next question, which skill makes you stand out as an academic?
I don't know. I'd say, I don't know if it's a skill. I guess it is. So I had a very, very broad training background. And because of that, I did most of my coursework and degree work in animal models, but all of my research for my master's and PhD were based on more clinical questions. And because of that, I can understand a really broad range of literature from molecular stuff all the way through sort of, sociological constructs. So it has really helped me in being able to draw from a broad range of background research and also to explain, in my discussion sections how it relates to both animal models, basic science, all the way up through the kind of clinical outcomes.
Mm-hmm. And then a random question. What do you listen to when you work?
Silence.
Okay.
I am not one of those people who can listen to music while I work unless it's entirely without lyrics. But if I really need to buckle down and focus, it's a very, very strange album. It's called Goat Rodeo, and it's Yo-Yo Ma and I don't know who else is the band on there, but it's basically Yo-Yo Ma, who's the classical musician, and combining with bluegrass or like banjo music. It's a very unique album, but I really like it.
I will check that out.
I find it very soothing.
Then my next question, what are you currently reading and how do you find time for reading, if at all?
So a couple weeks ago, I actually finished up, have you ever heard of the Discworld series? So
No.
It's by Terry Pratchett. It's actually intended for a young adult audience. So the books are very, very short, but it's sort of science fiction, fantasy genre. But it's very light reading, and I've been kind of picking up and putting down a couple of those and rereading them. So that was the last book that I actually finished. Right now, I have actually Lab Girl by Hope.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So that's on my nightstand right now, but I haven't finished it yet. At this point, I tend to read a couple pages before bed, and just set the book down when I get tired.
And my next question, are you more of an introvert or extrovert, and how does this influence your working habits?
I'm definitely more of an introvert. So I know a lot of people think of introverts as people who are socially awkward or can't socialize, but for me it's not so much the fact that I can't do that, but I find situations like mixers at conferences or needing to go up to somebody at a poster and kind of talk to them very energy intensive for me. So it takes a lot out of me. So because of that, like obviously it's part of my job. I have to do those things. But it's not something that I draw energy from. So for me, I tend to need to psych myself up to get into those situations. And also, I have learned when I need to pull the plug and just call it an evening. So either that, I am starting to become grumpy and need to just remove myself before I bring my mood to other people, or mainly just that.
What's your sleep routine like, and has it changed significantly since becoming a parent?
So I have twins, which means that I don't just have one baby waking up in the middle of the night. I have two. And oftentimes they will wake each other up. Luckily, recently they've been sleeping pretty well. So we put them down to sleep at around 7:30 at night, and they generally sleep through until about 6 in the morning. So this, for me personally, has dramatically changed my life. So I am by nature a night owl. So I would stay up happily midnight, 1 a.m., and then sleep until about 8 or 9 in the morning, and then just, continue on my day. But I now, because the babies are awake, I'm awake at 6 a.m. So it's completely kind of turned my wake and sleep cycle on its ear. And for me personally, because I am waking up so much earlier than I naturally would, it is quite draining. So I just try and make the best of it. But I am in bed usually by 11 o'clock at night now. But up at 6 a.m. bright and early every day.
What's your work routine like is my next question.
So I'm generally on campus between about 8:30 to 4:30 every day. At this point, since I am transitioning between labs, I don't really know what my new schedule is going to be like. But in my old lab, when I was seeing participants and getting stuff done, oftentimes about 3 days a week, I would have half of the day where I would be testing participants. So doing the neuropsych testing, the cognitive testing, and that kind of stuff. And then for a couple hours afterwards, I would be taking care of the scoring and data entry for those participants. And then on the off days, so the 2 days a week when I wasn't having participant contact, it would be mainly focused on more of the paperwork side of things. So abstracts, data analysis, data review, writing up papers, that kind of stuff. And then for me, just because I didn't work in the wet lab daily, usually about every other month or so, I would have a week to a week and a half where I would spend the entire time in the wet lab doing sort of the bench stuff with my pipettes and samples and whatnot, getting those pieces done in a block. Because those tasks, once you get started, it's not really like you can put them in the fridge and come back in a couple of weeks. So just needed to get done.
And my next question, how is it like to be a parent where you work, and are your colleagues supportive and understanding?
So my current lab, they have stressed through their teeth that they're very supportive and understanding, and that, my priority if something happens to the girls that I have to leave, it's understood that I'm just gonna get up and go. So it's been really nice with that. So yeah, so far so good.
That's great to hear. And how much maternity leave did you get, and was it paid leave?
So I am very lucky to be in Canada, where the standard of maternity leave is 1 year. So 1 calendar year. So I did take the full year, and it was a paid leave, but that was because I had a fellowship that covered it. So depending on the school that you're at, you may or may not qualify for the programs that cover paid maternity leave. So it's covered through something called EI, or employment insurance. And in order to qualify for that, you must be considered an employee by your university. So not all postdocs in Canada, unfortunately, fall under that umbrella.
What childcare services are you using, and does university provide support in finding and possibly funding childcare?
So I am using something called a day home. So it's just a small in-home daycare, usually limited to about 6 kids, that is run by one person. So my 2 girls are the only ones under the age of 3, and then there's 4 older boys who are in the daycare as well. The university does have a university daycare, but as a postdoc, I don't get the same access and benefits as the staff and students do. So I was told that we're kind of the last on the totem pole for spots. And since I was looking for twins, they said it was very unlikely that I would be able to secure childcare there. The other thing is that it was prohibitively expensive. So to send twins there for a postdoc, it would have basically been my monthly salary. So we decided not to go that route.
Mm-hmm. My penultimate question is, how is your parenting style?
At this point, with twin 1-year-olds, it's mainly just get through it. But I, as far as style, I try not to be overly corrective because having some background in brain development, I know that the reason that they're acting this way isn't because they're trying to be obnoxious or annoying or whatever to me. It's that that's where they are in their brain development, and we just need to go with it and try and correct, distract, and move on with the day. So I try not to get too wrapped up in the mechanics of it, but and also try not to punish for behaviors that their brains are just telling them what to do.
Mm-hmm. My last question, what's the best advice you ever received?
The best what?
Advice
I've ever received. So this actually is probably from David Shopik on Twitter. So when we first had the twins, he responded with, "Just remember, babies can't fall off the floor." And my husband and I use that very frequently. Like when all is said and done, if we need to run out of the room for a second or whatever, they get stuck on the floor because they can't fall off.
Mm-hmm. All right, that was my last question, so I will stop my recording.